great to be with you. It's great to be back in Brownwood among such good friends. The Budget Control Act 2011, signed in early August, had one shining win for my grandchildren and your grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And that is a legitimate opportunity to adopt a constitutional amendment that would require a balanced budget for this country to be passed this quarter. The law requires that from October 1 to December 31st, both houses have to vote on some version of a balanced budget amendment. I fully expect Mr. Reed to put up a version that probably not many people would support in order to fulfill the deal. But we also have a second clause in there that if either house passes one with 2/3, either 290 votes in the House or 67 votes in the Senate, that exact version has to be voted on in the other body. So we can't play games. So our goal for the next 3 months is to craft a balanced budget amendment that can attract 50 Democrats. We got 240 Republicans, and not every one of us are going to vote for whatever version comes up, I think. We've got to track. So what that means, though, is that it will not be the version that only Republicans will vote for, because this isn't theater. Unlike some of what we do, which is crafted only to force the Dems to vote no, they do it to force us to vote the other way. But this is what we want adopted. It's the right thing for this country. So we're going to put the full court press on. I'm going to ask you as Rotarians and trade members, trade association members across the broad spectrum to help us adopt this issue as something that you think is good for the country. And talk to folks who live in districts that don't have a member of Congress that thinks they'll vote for it, don't have a senator who thinks they'll vote for it. Try to push the grassroots support to get this done. It's the right thing to do for the country, but if it doesn't happen, then it becomes political. Because we've already got 23 Democrat seats, Senate seats up for re-election in 2012. 6 of those folks have decided not to run for re-election. We've got 17 that are trying to convince voters to send it back. We already have all 17 of them on the record as saying they do not want to repeal Obamacare. We got that vote as a result of the CR we did earlier this year. They had to vote. It wasn't a procedure vote. It was a legitimate up or down vote on Obamacare, and all 17 of them said no. This will be the second big deal for elections next year. If they say no to a balanced budget amendment that passed the House, we will arm the challengers for those seats in 2012 with a couple of really good distinguishing positions for their voters to consider as they look at that. So my ask of you guys is that as you have either editorial board work or things that you can do in other parts of Texas and the United States where folks might not be amenable to it, to help those constituents get to their member of Congress and their senator to make this happen. Historical backdrop. 1995-96, a balanced budget amendment passed the House of Representatives both years. It was a part of the contract with America, I think 300 votes. So it can be done. It failed in the Senate by 1 vote. 1 vote. Think how much differently today's conversation would be about our financial circumstances had the leadership then, the folks voting then, believed it was the right thing for this country. It would have never been easier to implement, unlike this one. At that point in time, the federal budget was about to come close to balancing. Social Security surpluses were helping with that, but nevertheless, they were a lot narrower than the 1.3 trillion we've got to deal with. That's President Obama called it. $9.5 trillion in new debt since that time. He really is interested. It
really wasn't mine. I'm just making sure mine's on now.
How much? $9.5 trillion of debt that wouldn't have occurred. That our grandkids wouldn't have to pay the debt service on. And so it can be done. It's important. And so I'm pitching this everywhere I go that there's nothing that could be done in the next quarter at the federal level more important than getting this to the states for ratification. And I think the 38 states necessary to ratify will happen very quickly. Obviously, Texas is not in session. Their legislature is not in session next year, but you know, the hopes and thoughts give it to a special session and all that kind of stuff. We just got to do it. We can't sustain the path we're on. The president's very cavalier, very condescending about this issue. Say, yeah, we don't need that. And we're adults. We're smart. We're bright. We got the answers. don't do that. It's an unnecessary impediment. Technically, he's correct, but I got $15 trillion worth of evidence that his system's not working. We're going to have to handcuff decision makers in the way that every other budget is. The city, the county, you're either going through it or have gone. The school district just went through it. You got to balance the budget. You got to make hard choices between good things. Rarely do you have a good thing, bad thing. Those are easy. But you're looking at things that can help people, things that will make lives better that you can't afford. And that has to happen at the federal level, and it won't happen at the federal level in the scope that it needs to happen without this doing. Here's the scope it needs to happen. The budgets we passed in April, the House budget, takes 25 years to balance. 25 years of deficits, shrinking deficits, but 25 years of deficits to additional debt over that time frame. We can't do that. That one passed with a couple of Democrats and motion votes. The most aggressive budget that was offered was the Republican Study Committee budget, and it balances in 7 years. It is spectacularly aggressive to make that happen. I voted for it, it got 119 votes. Not even half the Republicans voted for the one to balance in 7 years. So, we got to have a balanced budget done. If it gets put in place, the transition to whatever that is will be hard. It will be spectacularly difficult. I get it. You can't trim the size of this government the way we must. You can't reduce the expenditures against GDP the way we must and have business as usual. There will be people who will lose their jobs. There will be people who won't get money from the federal taxpayer that they otherwise thought they were going to get. And I'm a CPA, but I've got enough of a heart left to know how hard this is going to be. For them individually, it'll be hard. But I also have confidence in families and neighbors and communities rallying to help those people get through whatever it is they've got to get through for the greater good. Because Susanna has 7 grandkids. I hope they have children. I hope I'm allowed to see those children. I want them to have a fighting chance as America that you and I, as adults, stepped into, and we are in danger of not passing off that legacy the way every other generation did. And it's in our control. We can make it happen, but we've got to have some handcuffs that we've done. 2 other things. Medicare, Social Security. We have to have a very frank, open, honest, straightforward conversation with folks under 55. Now, if you're over 55, tune in just for the conversational value, tune out as to impact. Art is doing a major disservice to you who are members of that organization if you're over 55 by trying to frighten you with what needs to be done. Shame on them for doing it. It's not the first time they've acted in their own best interest. It is against the common good of this country for them to be doing what they're saying, because we are not, repeat, not talking about anybody 55 or older. Those promises remain. Plans have been put in place by those folks, counting on Medicare, counting on Social Security, and that woman they had it there. We ought to keep those promises, and I'm going to work to try to make sure that happens. If you're under 55, with respect to Medicare, here's the harsh reality. You will, as a senior, pay higher percentages of your health care costs than your parents and grandparents did. There is no other way to do it. We can't afford the current system for folks in those age groups. It's unsustainable. There is not a projection out there that shows that it is. So how do we go about doing that? Republicans had a fix in the budget that we passed in April. Is it the only fix? I have no idea. Is it the best fix? I don't know that either. I do know it's a fix. And it scores in ways that are fiscally responsible to future generations. They can afford it. So it will work on the projections. Now, let's have a conversation about that. Let's challenge that, those deals. Let's argue about that. Is there ways to improve it? Is there a different way to do that? But the other side right now simply says, no, we're not messing with that. 2024 is the first time we'll really have a big problem, and I won't be the president under any circumstances. That's irresponsible of anybody to take that approach. So we have to have that renegotiation. I've started using the word renegotiate for Social Security and Medicare. Reform is the normal word used in people in my position. Reform is a nice, warm, fuzzy, cuddly word. Everybody wins. Come out singing Kumbaya and all that kind of good stuff. Church again. This isn't reform. This is renegotiation. And it's got to be that start in order to make this work. Social Security is the less difficult of the two. We're going to have to raise the retirement age. We're going to have to change the way the benefits or initial benefits are started. We have to change the way they grow over time. I think we ought to have a dual bracket for benefits. If you've made up to a certain amount of money in your career, you'll have a little higher initial benefit that would grow faster. If you're made more than that, you have a little lower benefit that would grow slower, still getting return on your money, return on your investment, but at a rate that's it's indicative of it needs testing a little bit, but not specifically that per se. There are some things we can do that will make Social Security actuarially cash flow itself over an infinite horizon. When they talk about Social Security going bankrupt, that's a misnomer. It's a bit of an inflammatory statement. Social Security doesn't go bankrupt. In 2036, 2037, the law currently in place kicks in that says you cannot pay out any more in benefits in a year than you have collected that year or is in surplus. So in 2037, the surpluses will have all been used up, and anybody on benefits at that point in time gets a 27% haircut in their benefit. Okay, Social Security's going to be there, but at this stage, it's if that 27% cut was October 2nd or 3rd, whenever they come out, there would be pandemonium in the streets. So why not fix it now? The changes we can make today will be less draconian than the changes that we have to make in 5 years or 10 years. I argue that we have chosen, since 2005, when President Bush put this on the table, we have chosen to ignore we've chosen not to do anything, to do nothing. Now, the cost of that procrastination is $600 million a year. For each year we don't do anything. And we are choosing as responsible adults to do it. Since Katrina hit in August of 2005, not much talk about Social Security. $600 billion, 6 years, $3.6 trillion in irresponsible stuff. So, the sooner we go at both of them, the better. Medicare, I don't know if our answer is the only way, but you've got to be responsible. If you disagree with ours, great. Come up with a better plan, modify our plan, present whatever it is needs to be presented, but let's deal with it so that we are able to save that safety net and the Social Security safety net for future generations of Americans, but in a way that's affordable by future generations of Americans. So,